just give you a little bit of background. I've been carving for about 27, 28 years now. Started actually with a class that was taught by our club, and started going to the meetings, and then just kind of took it from there. So I've done all kinds of carving. I've done relief, I've done chip, but in the round is really what I like to do most of the time. And most of my carvings are caricatures. I have done some humanistic type carvings with Native Americans and mountain people and that type of carving, but most of them are caricatures. That's kind of where the class is going to be focused today, is on carving more or less small caricatures. The principles we're going to use today for the eyes and the nose are same thing you can apply to a bigger carving if you like. It's just, you'll modify it a little bit as you go. So this is where I'm kind of going to go today, is that today we'll start off and we'll do a nose in the morning. In the afternoon, we'll carve an eye. And then tomorrow we'll come back and try to put both of those together so that we can do a full face on a stick. Most of my carvings right now are Santa Clauses, getting ready. But when we start doing a face, do whatever type of individual you want. If you carve something that's really bizarre, you can always say it's a witch, because you cannot go wrong carving any kind of Halloween figures. The nose can be terrible, you name it. Looks better the worse it is. But when I started carving, I had a variety of guys that I would read their brochures and try to say, okay, this is the way I'm going to carve an eye. And carving that face was always the critical part of a carving, that it's either make or break. You screw it up or you're successful. So it always bothered me, and being an engineer, I wanted to just get a process set up so that I would follow one and then I would know what I was going to do. And you could always vary it, but once you get a process and you do it thousands of times, it comes more natural and you don't really worry about it as much. So that's what I did with the eye and the nose. They're not really just my processes. You're going to find these out on the web probably by multiple carvers, but I've kind of taken a little bit from each maybe and adapted it to my own. So this is what we'll do. We'll start up and we'll just do the nose this morning. It's like 7, 8 steps that you go through to do it, and we'll just follow along that process. If you want to make a learning stick, you can do it all down your stick, or you can concentrate on just carving one nose or two noses, however many you can fit in today. But the way I set up the stick is, I do step 1, then step 2 is step 1 plus another added on. Step 3 is that plus another one, and you just keep going. So that's what we're going to do. Any questions? So I'd say take your stick. So Steve, let's go to the PowerPoint. Let me talk about the nose just a little bit before we carve. That's the shot of the nose from the top. The important thing I think about the nose is that it's a triangular shape. It's going to be coming along pretty natural when we carve off the corner of this stick. But if you happen to be carving on a piece that was flat on the front, then in a case like that, you'd have to leave a wedge of wood up there and then shape it into a triangle. A lot of the students, when I look at what they've got for noses, you're going to find that it looks like they ran into a wall, so that you've got a real pug-shaped nose. So you may find that people don't carve off that front flat. So it's very important to get that triangular shape to your nose. When you look at sizes, there it is. Okay. So we're kind of open when we carve this learning stick because we don't have an eye defined. But when we get into the face, you're going to find that the width of the nose is typically just about 1 eye wide. And it's going to be about 1.5 eyes long. And we'll see that in another chart as we come up. So that kind of gives you the proportions. Everybody's different. You can't go too wrong. You look at your neighbor and you go, your nose doesn't look like that. But in general, that is about the ratio and the size of the way you make a nose. The other parts of the nose that we're going to talk about is certainly the bridge of your nose, which is up here. All of that is giving protection for your eyes. We'll talk about the ball of your nose, and then the other important thing are the wings that are down here. and we cut the wings. When you look at the nose from the bottom, there's always this piece of cartilage right here at the middle of your nose called the septum. And that septum is seen from the side on most everybody's nose. Your nose can be pretty flat. It can be up a little bit, but you will see this cartilage when I look at you from the side, when you look at your neighbor from the side. So we'll get into that when we cut the nostrils. A variety of ways we can cut the nostrils, either straight or curved, and it gives a different effect depending on which way you carve them. So this is from the book by Jack Ham. Jack is one of my early mentors. And every time I recommend Jack's book, if you don't have it, it's a wealth of knowledge. I started this book way back when I started carving 20-some years ago. You can find them used. If you go out used books, I think they're probably $12 or something like that. But he goes into, it's not a carving book, it's a drawing book, but it's all the same thing applies. But he will talk about the face, he'll talk about the layout of the face, where the eyes are, where the ears are, dimensions, different expressions. Then as you go into carving full figures, I mean, he gets into, you know, all of the body parts and the length of your arms relative to your body. And then he gets into clothing. It talks about, it's always difficult for me when I'm trying to carve clothing on where to get the folds and everything. And Jack gives a really good explanation of, you know, when your cloth is under tension, when it's sagging, and which way the folds go and everything. One thing Jack does is he lays out the face relative to the eyes, which makes it pretty convenient. So when you have a face, it's basically 5 eyes wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you got one in the middle here that's between the 2 eyes. So you got an eye, one in the middle, and then you got one on each side. That will help you define so that if you're carving a face, you don't make one big eye like a cartoon character. So it will help you figure out how big to make your eyes when you know how big your face is going to be. You'll see that he doesn't have the ears on here, so that's basically just this part. So your ears stick out a little bit more than that. So leave a little wood there for your ears. Just to mention now, and we'll get more into it this afternoon when we look at the eye, but the eye is about half as tall as it is wide. When you lay out a face, if you go from this corner of the eye to this corner of the eye, you make an equilateral triangle, and that will define where your bottom lip's going to lay. And then you can see that the nose is up here about 1 eye above that. So it just kind of helps you lay out the face in proportions to sizes. So we'll cover that tomorrow more when we start putting everything together. But right now you're going to think about the nose is going to be basically 1 eye wide, and it's about 1.5 eyes tall. Okay. So the other thing that you get into with the nose these are the smile lines that come out here. They start above the wing and they go down and they anchor out toward the corner of your mouth. And so this cut right in here will be important to give a shadow. And it goes from around the wing out to the corner of the mouth. These lines can be straight lines, they can be broken, two cuts. So there's a variety depending on the individual that you're carving. But they really help define the mouth barrel, which is right here, which is set up by your teeth. Your teeth set up that curvature right there to make the mouth barrel. They also do the all-important helping to recess the nose. Your nose is half off your face, half on your face. So it will help define that dimension. And so this just emphasizes that your nose is not totally off your face. Right here, your nose is halfway off and then halfway on. And we get that all-important cut right in here around the bottom of the nose and the wings, and then these laugh lines that come off here that help define that. When you're carving a nose, depending on the individual, you can, male noses tend to be straighter. Female noses and youth tend to go up with a little bit of an angle. So you may want to reflect that in your carving depending on the caricature that you're carving. Another thing that always amazes me is that the placement of the bridge of your nose with your eyes. I mean, I always thought that there was a different relationship, but if you lay a pencil in the bridge of your nose, it always amazed me that my eyes are actually falling below that bridge. So whenever you're laying in your eyes and your nose and everything, you can extend that bridge up a little bit past your eye socket, and it works out the way it's supposed to be. All right, so that's just some general characteristics of the nose. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to lay out where the bridge of the nose goes, and that bridge is basically going to be where the eye socket goes across. So we'll lay out the bridge, we'll lay out the bottom of the nose. I'd suggest that when you start making your noses, make them a little bit longer than you want to end up with. You can always go back and cut it off, make it shorter, but it's more difficult the other way. So you lay off the bridge and the bottom, we'll come down, we'll define the width of an eye. This is an arbitrary width because this is just a practice stick. You don't know how big your eye is going to be at this point because you don't have the rest of the face. But lay it in there pretty wide. There's no reason to make it a little bitty nose today. I think that's the other thing I see with a lot of students is you tend to end up with a very, very small nose. I tend to end up, most of mine are Santa Clauses, they're caricatures. You can make a larger nose and get away with it. If you make a large and you want to go smaller, you can always trim him back. But for today's class, I'd make that eye pretty wide. That's going to define the width of the nose down there. So then we'll come in and we'll go up the side of the nose. So we got, well, let me mention too that in that first cut, I did the bridge, I did the bottom, I also tapered back so that I got a profile. There, I get a profile on the nose. Bridge, bottom of the nose, we'll get a profile. Like I said, a lot of times when students start carving, they leave it flat here. So you're going to go from the tip of the nose clear into the bridge with that taper and going up. So then, next thing we're going to do is come up here by the side of the nose. We're going to go into the gouge and we're going to go right into that eye socket. And what I like to do is go up the side of the nose with my gouge and go right into that socket. I'll lift the gouge and just kind of turn it a little bit and take out a piece of wood. You want that area to be deep on this corner of the eye because you got to have roundness going in from the outside to the inside when we do carve the eyes. And to get that, you got to make it deeper here. So the inside of your eye is not going to be seen when I look at you from the outside. Once we got that, then I tend to make these slight cuts back here at the bottom of the nose so that I can see the middle, just a little bit of a cut to kind of define where the septum in the middle of the nose is going to be. We'll round up the tip, and then the next important thing is we'll set the wings. And we'll set those wings using a gouge, very simple procedure. And then once we do that, then we can come in, take that slice of wood off, making a good stop cut from the top of the wing to the bottom of the nose, cut in the smile line, take out a wedge, and that's going to give you a really good shadow there for the nose. So, all right, so first cut, why don't we get started? Take your stick and just define. So I'd take that on the stick, kind of just, you're at the, close to the top, leave yourself a little room, make a line where you're going to make the eye channel, and go down a good distance, about an inch or so, and say, okay, that's going to be the bottom of my nose. So that's going to be my eye socket. This is going to be the bottom of my nose. I tend to make my eye channel And I'm calling this the eye channel. This is a channel we're going to cut when we define the eyes later on. But I tend to make those at a little bit of an angle. I'm not trying to get an oriental look or anything like that, but it just to me looks a little bit better than straight across. Straight across is okay. You can go either way. When I make the eye channel, when I make that top cut, I make it at an angle, because when we do the eyes, we're going to be making a channel in there that's about 110 degrees. It's going to come down, and that's going to be the top of the eye. It's going to come out at the bottom. That's going to be the cheeks. So this top cut is not a straight in cut. Let me just go ahead and make it, and then you guys can. So I just kind of angle that in. Coming up from the top and the bottom. Am I on camera enough? And if I'm carving and I'm not on camera, please just yell out, because I'm not looking at both. I'll try to get them equal, symmetrical left to right, more or less. We're going to be carving on them, so. All right, so this is the bottom of my nose that I've defined. So I'm just making a stop cut and then some peeling cuts, push cuts right up to it, just to kind of get things defined. And you want to take out, quite a bit of wood right in there so that you've got a good nose started there. All right, so you've got the bridge, you got the bottom. So now you're going to define how wide, and Dick, you were asking about this, how wide you want that nose to be. So knowing the size of your face, remembering that you want the nose to be about one eye wide, so the distance between my two eyes down to my nose is how wide the nose is going to be down here at the wings. Put two dots, put you a couple dots.
What is the information that you have there?
Okay. So this is step number one. So I'm just saying that the nose is about 1.5 times as wide as you're going to make it. So, the nose was 1 eye wide. I said it's about 1.5 eye long. And then it says taper to the brow. So we've cut this in. This is our eye socket, the bridge. This is the bottom of the nose. This is the tip of the nose. And now we're going to taper this back.
Okay.
So that we get this profile, Joe. So right now, if you look at the profile of your nose, what do you got? If it's like mine, this guy right here, this is where you end up with that darn pug nose. You've kind of cut in for the eye socket. You've cut in the base of the nose, but if you don't do anything else, then you got a nose that looks like it ran into a wall, right? Everybody see that? That's not what we want. We want a profile. So now we're going to go from the tip of the nose, we're going to slope it back to the eye socket. So this is the, or I should there. right here, this one. That's the profile of my nose right now. Not exactly what I want. Now, depending on the character that you're carving, if you look at Native Americans, they may have a double hook to their nose. It may go up this way and then another slope. All that's fine. Just define what you want this guy to be. But in the end, most noses are going to have a profile that look like a nose, just a triangle from the side. So you're going to taper that back. You're tapering from the tip of the nose back to your eye socket. And you can make it a straight. You can, sometimes if I'm doing Santa Clauses, I may give them a little bit of a curve, but I would basically just keep that guy straight. Do two things. I mean, every time you carve, you pick up your work and you look at it, and you're always looking this way, so you look a different way and you get a different perspective. But on these guys, take a look at your side, see if you got a profile. You look at it from the bottom to see that you still got a triangle. Okay, so now would be the time to say, okay, how big am I going to make the nose on this person? Is it going to be really big? Not so big. So we've got step one. We defined the brow, we defined the base, we defined the nose to be about 1.5 times as wide as we're going to want it. We'll size it in more detail later. The next thing to do would be define how wide the eye is going to be or how wide the nose is going to be. Probably good practice to put you a couple dots on your stick for this practice one. It says, okay, I want my eye to be that wide. That's how one eye is going to be. So I would just come in here and I would say, okay, I think on this face, and don't make it too small. This is to study a nose, so give yourself some distance. One of the other problems that I typically see is that when people are carving the nose, they get a good distance down here at the wings, but when you go up here into the eye socket, this tends to go to 0. Well, your nose doesn't really go to 0. There's still flesh and cartilage and everything in between your eyes that fare out. So you don't want to take that distance to 0. So we've done two dots to mark the eyes right there. And then just drop you a couple lines down. Drop you a couple lines down to the wings. So now you got the nose defined, but you got to take off this wood right in here and start giving the nose some shape and pushing it back into the cheeks. And so what we're going to do is from the wings here, so we've defined the wings to be 1 eye wide. That's going to be 1 eye up here at the eye channel. But your nose does kind of narrow down, and all you end up with a little bit of bone and cartilage in the middle. So what we do there is we're going to go up. Let me make this cut and I'll come around and show you first. I'm going to start about 1/3 of the way up on the nose. I'm going to leave a big bulk of wood here for cutting the wings. But what I'm going to do is go in here above the wing. I'm going to go up the side of the nose, and I'm going to go right into that eye socket, right where I define my eye. And as I go up there, this is when I lift my gouge, and I actually turn it, make a cut, pop out. All right. So going up both sides, trying to keep them symmetrical. And you can take out a good piece of wood on that inside corner. This is starting to define the cheeks. I just tend to either take my knife or a gouge, but maybe just knock that corner off the nose a little bit, Just kind of smooth it down into the cheek structure. And then you can do the same thing with the cheek, that severe cut you got from the gouge. Just round that off a little bit, get rid of that peak sharp head that you got there. So all I did was round up this cheek just a little bit. I had the gouge cut going up through there. Take my knife, smooth that off a little bit so that I've got a cheek. I had the same thing on the inside right there with the nose, and I just fared that back into the cheek so that it's smoothed out. Let's take the bottom of the nose. Right now it should be pretty much just straight across. I don't want to take off a lot of wood, but just to give it a little bit of a shape at the bottom, I'm just going to make kind of a smooth end cut. If I had any moldable knife cuts there, I'd get rid of those. Give it a little bit of an angle from the side so that just a slight angle through here on each side, bringing those nostrils up. You still want to leave a lot of wood there for your wings. Right now his nose is very pointed, and we'll typically have a ball there. I don't use a gouge, Joe. I just take my knife and round that over a little bit to get rid of the sharpness. You could use a gouge, no doubt, but I'm not taking off very much wood, just a few slivers to kind of end up with a little bit more of a profile with roundness rather than just a sharp peak. So you've kind of sloped the two sides back a little bit so that you've got the center down at the bottom. You got the septum showing. And we've rounded over.
Okay, let's walk through that again.
So we were here when we cut back on the sides right there, and we just rounded up the tip a little bit. All right, so you've got your lines down below there that says this is how wide I want the nose to be. So I think this is one of the neatest cuts in all in making the whole nose thing set up, is we're going to go ahead and we're going to set the wings. And if you do my nose stick, you'll notice that I kind of jumped around a little bit. I was cutting the nostrils in here on this one, but I think it's better if we go ahead and set the wings first. And to do that, depending on the size of the nose that you have, but you can get usually a gouge that is going to work pretty well. And for this size of a carving, I don't know, these Harmon tools work well. This is kind of about a number 7, 1/4 of an inch or something like that. So when we set in the wings, they're going to define how wide the nose is. The key here is that when I make this cut, I'm going to push the gouge in, but I don't go straight in. If I go straight in, that's it. That's how wide the nose is going to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in at an angle, going to the outside, And as I do that, then I can always come back in and make it smaller, smaller, smaller. But so push your gouge in. Let me make this cut first, and then I'll show you guys when we walk around. So I'm just taking my gouge. I'm going in upside down. So I'm going to put it here where I want the wing to be, and I want the wing to be about that wide. And I'm going to push it in, and I'm going at an outside angle. So I stuck it in, and the gouge is going in outward. All right, once you make that stop cut, you should be able to take your gouge, and it's got the same profile. Just go in, go into the back, start back a little bit on the face, and take out that chip of wood. Because you got the same profile going from the front and the back. All right, so what I'd like you to do, then the next step this is really just to kind of emphasize the shadows, and it's to help start it setting up the mouth barrel, laugh lines, and everything like that. You may have to take a little bit of the wood away from below the nose to get some of this to operate, so give yourself a little working room, get rid of that corner, shape it up like there's going to be a beard or the rest of the face down below. I'm just taking off this corner. So I'm going to go in here above the wing. I'm just going to do straight in stop cut. I'm coming around the wing. I'm going down and underneath the bottom of the nose. Straight in, good stop cut. Top of the wing, straight in cut. Around the wing, around to the bottom of the nose. Another rule of thumb is that your mouth is 2 eyes wide. So you got 1 eye in the middle, and then if you go half an eye to your pupil basically, and you come down, that's the corner of your mouth. So you got 1 eye, a half and a half, so it's 2 eyes. So you can kind of just gauge where my mouth is going to be and say, okay, the mouth is about yay wide. The reason you do that is because, like we said earlier, this lifeline that comes up here from above the wing, I'm going to bring that out, straight in stop cut, and I'm going to bring it out toward the edge of the mouth. Here, now I can either do it as a straight line. If he's laughing, I may want to curl it around and take it into the cheek more, or I may just take it down. So the next cut you're going to want is you made the cut around the wing underneath the nose. You made this laugh line go in here. And now you're going to take out a little wedge. For all you chip carvers, this should be a piece of cake. There's a little triangle of wood there. that gets taken out. Next thing, you can kind of, now it's kind of cleaning up the nose and all. But one thing I would suggest you might consider is extending the wings. We started them up here, but a lot of times the wing will be defined more and carry on up toward the tip of the nose. So what I do is just take a small gouge. I got the wing defined where it's coming in here, and maybe just give a little more definition on the top side and extend it like that. Can you see that cut? On up like this. Another small gouge, yeah. And
should the nose at this point be about the right shape?
it should be.
All right, and then that what you're doing should be, after this is kind of the right shape, if you want to do it in the wing a little bit more.
So now you need to put the nostrils in. Really, that makes a big difference on the nose too. So you get several different choices on doing the nostrils. You can cut them in there with just a knife, making 3 triangular cuts and take out a little wedge and do it that way. The other thing I like to show is that let me shape this nose a little bit. The bottom of your nostril can make a big difference on how the look comes in. So on this side, I'm just going to do a straight cut. We made that cut before, but this is just really to emphasize it more, giving more shape to the bottom of the nose and making sure that the center. So that's one look with a straight cut. The other one is if you come in with a gouge, I think I could do it with this one. And I make this cut. Now I would go back in later and put a triangle in there, or Dremel, and cut it out for the nostril. But just to the different look that you get from a straight cut or cutting up with a gouge to give a curvature. If you want to go ahead and put a mustache or something on the nose you carved, that you just sketch that in and a few quick cuts, have a mustache. It's easier to do a mustache than it is a mouth. So if you decide you want to put in a mustache and a lower lip, just keep in mind that your lower lip does not stick out in front of your nose. So you're probably going to have to take off some wood from the stick down below to put that lip in. So we started off and we kind of defined how big our nose was going to be. And we set in the, got to set in the brow line, because we got to have something to taper the nose back to, right? So we got something to taper back into. Take out the bottom of the nose, just a series of straight in cuts. If I don't follow my own directions, I'll tell you, after you carve a whole bunch of these, you kind of go, you jump around. It's just like any carving. It never works. So you gotta make it go with what you carve, and so. Get rid of some of this down below, and get rid of some of this up here that's forehead. So I've got the width of my nose defined. There and there. I know where my eyes are going to be. So then I'm going to go from here down into that eye socket. Take out that wood. Making it deep on the inside because I want to be able to curve the eye into that eye socket. Same thing on both sides. So we're going to define the wings, that outboard cut. Come right back in. Use the same curvature, take that chip out. Take that out so I get nose going half off. Like I said, I never follow my own rules, so then I'm going to get this thing tapered back in there because I still got a pug nose. Get rid of those ridges. Move the cheeks back a little bit. Take that wedge out. Once I get the wings defined, then I know how much to take off up here. Extend that wing a little bit. It's hard to see the contrast, but anyway, you got all the basics, so. You're basically going to have your face, you're going to know how wide it is, you're going to say, okay, this is about the width I want for my nose. From there you can lay out your eyes, you can lay the nose, you can lay the mouth, and make your face.